Thank you, Colleen. I have to say this is the most mic'd up I've been for a presentation. I've never had this much interest in a talk that I've given, so thank you for coming. So now we're going to switch gears and talk about what you've all come here for, and that's Asians in New Zealand, perceptions of Asians in New Zealand, as well as the experiences of Asian people in New Zealand. So Asian people in New Zealand are the fastest growing population. 9% of the total population is now Asian, which has surpassed Pacific Island population. This has happened rapidly in the last 20 or so years. This incredible increase has happened with changes in policy in immigration policy to be more inclusive in 87 and 91. And in the year 2001-2002, 60% of migrants came in under the general skills category, and about half of them were Asian. But yet, as you'll see in a minute, Asians experience more discrimination than any other group in New Zealand. All right, so first I'll focus on attitudes of New Zealanders towards Asian people. So again, in a national sample, similar to the findings that Colleen has already shown us, there seems to be a preference for certain immigrant groups over others, and people from Asian countries are viewed less favorably. This is particularly true for Asian migrants from Muslim countries. You can see that these migrants are seen less favorably than the general immigrant category. This is just another illustration here. So people of Muslim religious background are seen as less favorably than other religious backgrounds. When New Zealanders are asked about their views of Asia in general, they view Asia quite favorably. So this is a national sample. Asia, when you're looking at their attitudes towards the regions of the world, they view Asia more favorably than everywhere else except for Australia. Sorry? Oh, more important. Sorry. So Asia is seen as more important than Europe, including the UK, to New Zealand. So seen as having a more positive impact. Go ahead. But then these same New Zealanders were asked to identify different areas where Asia can have an impact on New Zealand. And there seems to be this trend that some New Zealanders wish to have a one-way relationship with Asia, where they wish to benefit economically. So you can see that here. These four facets at the top are seen as having a positive impact on New Zealand, so Asian tourism in New Zealand, exports from New Zealand to Asia, economic growth of Asia, and free trade agreements. But when asked about the impact of Asian culture on New Zealand culture and values, it's seen as less positive. Some New Zealanders see this as less positive. Go ahead. So again, when we're thinking about the way that New Zealanders view the different migrant groups in New Zealand, again, this is a national sample. Chinese and other Asian people, as you can see here, are believed to increase the crime in New Zealand. This is actually false. So it's only 2.5% of the population, the incarcerated population, the population in prison, are of Asian origin, as opposed to the 9% in the total population. They're also viewed to slightly more than other groups to take jobs away from New Zealanders. And especially with the Chinese group, they are seen to be good for the economy, which, as we will see again in the next few slides, this might not actually be true either, because of the inequities that they face in terms of getting employment in New Zealand. So when New Zealanders, in another national sample, when New Zealanders are asked about who is discriminated against in New Zealand, when they're asked in an unprompted fashion, just in an open-ended question, 64% of people identify a racial or an ethnic category, and 28% of those identify Asian people. So Asians have come out on top year after year. And the same is shown when they're asked to identify how much discrimination each various groups experience in New Zealand. Again, Asians come out on top year after year. One common perception is that migrants in general, as well as Asian migrants specifically, stick to themselves and live in ethnic enclaves and do little to try to fit in with the broader society. But several studies have shown that, in fact, Asian migrants specifically try as much as they can to fit into New Zealand. They wish to learn about New Zealanders. They want to know about life in New Zealand. And again, they're met with sort of invisible barriers and aren't able to interact in a significant way with New Zealanders. Having said that, they do have the opinion that New Zealanders are very polite and friendly, but they have a hard time making meaningful connections. But on this topic, it has been shown that people who have more New Zealanders who have more contact with Asians, in fact, feel warmer towards people from Asia, and the people who do have less contact don't feel as warm. So now we'll get into the experiences of Asian people in New Zealand. So broadly, their experiences of discrimination. In the Listens survey of all recent migrants in New Zealand, it was a study asking about experiences of migrants in New Zealand. And one of the questions asked about their discrimination that they experienced. So when asked if they had experienced discrimination in New Zealand, you can see here that people from North Asia had experienced the highest rates, followed by people from Southeast Asia. Oh, I should say that people from North Asia are from countries such as China, Japan, Korea. Southeast Asia, countries such as the Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia. And South Asians came in, followed them, Indian subcontinent. I do want to make a note on that last slide. These are percentages of people within these ethnic groups who had ever experienced discrimination since they'd been in New Zealand. So this shows that it could be infrequent occurrences, but they are experiencing those infrequent occurrences at a higher rate than other groups. When asked where they were experiencing this discrimination, the most common place was a public place such as a street, and the next two were employment related, so when working at a job and when searching for a job. And it was also shown that North Asian migrants experienced discrimination in the street higher than any other groups.